Hi, you're listening to When Isabel Met Aviva, a podcast about rom-coms, female-driven screenwriting, and how to break into the entertainment industry. I'm Aviva,
And I'm Isabel.
and thanks for joining us, guys. It's been so fun. This is episode 5 of the pod,
Wow.
and we're just still so excited. We're getting more guests, and this is one of our guest episodes. So
Yeah.
we are about to talk to Christine Conrad, who is a prolific Hallmark and Lifetime writer, producer, director. She has over 70 credits on
This is
IMDb.
amazing.
She's so cool. I've been in contact with her for a few years since I took her Christmas webinar class in 2021. I was taking some like Christmas writing classes to break into that genre, and so I took her class, and it was amazing. It really opened my eyes to like how huge this genre is, the Christmas genre and the made-for-TV just world. It's incredible. They're making so many films each year. So we're really excited to chat with her all about her background, writing, her new movies coming up, all that. So thanks
And
for
she gave us
tuning
first
in.
a little Christmas charm that
Yes.
we read. Yeah,
Yes,
I'm
we read
excited to.
that. We saw the film. So we're excited to chat with her about that project with Ashley Green from Twilight, who we love.
Yeah.
We love
Shout
anything
out
Twilight
Twilight.
related on our pod. And yeah, let's just get into the interview and chat with Christine. Cool.
Thanks so much for your time, Christine. We're really excited to chat with you. I think you guys know each other, or how did you guys meet?
Yeah, I believe I signed up for Christine's Christmas webinar in 2021 during the
Oh, wow.
pandemic, and I believe that's how we connected. And then there's a Facebook holiday group, and I think that's how we became Facebook friends.
Oh, cool. Yeah, you just added me to that Facebook group, I think.
Yes, it's a really cool one. There are a lot
Yeah,
of
it seems really
prolific
fun.
people in there.
Wait, what was the class that Christine taught?
It was the holiday. You took the 2021 holiday webinar, right?
Yes.
And
Oh,
that
okay,
was a
okay.
fun one because we were in the middle of the pandemic and no one could go anywhere.
Yeah.
So everybody started doing these online webinars. But I actually started doing mine, I think it was 2 years before that. I do it every year. It's the holiday screenwriting or screenplay webinar. And I talk about how to write holiday movies for different platforms like Netflix and Hallmark and Lifetime and all those. So
Oh,
Yeah,
that's really
yeah.
cool.
It
That's
was super
awesome.
fun. I went through this long phase. I took like multiple, there were a bunch of webinars during that time. So I took yours, I took like a few others, and it was really beneficial. And I was just watching a ton of Hallmark movies, and it was my like Hallmark awakening.
awesome.
Yeah, it was really fun to learn about that. So
I'm actually doing
yeah.
one again. I'm doing one again this year too on December
Oh,
2nd.
cool.
Yeah,
So
it's a
December
little bit.
2nd.
Yeah, December 2nd. It's a little different than the one that you took, Aviva, because basically I talked a lot in yours about how to write those movies, the Christmas movies, and how all the things that go into that. And this year I'm going to talk a little bit about that, but I'm going to lean in more to how you sell them after you have them done, because there's so many people now who have done them, and now that you have the script, you're like, what do I do with it
Yeah.
now? Really good. Where do I send it? So I'm going to lean more into that this year and talk a little bit about how you figure out who to send it to and how to query and all the things that you need to have ready, like your log line and your synopses and all those things.
That
That
sounds
sounds,
super helpful. I might sign up for that class.
yeah, same. I need that class.
Yeah, seriously. Though I do feel like we were like cold emailing people to come on our podcast, and we got like a few no's, but we got some responses from some like big people that we both had a moment of like, oh, this kind of helped us learn about how to write a cold email.
Yeah, it's all a learning experience,
Yeah.
even the rejection.
It is. And you can
Yeah.
definitely get better at it too.
Yeah.
Like you do get better. I do consulting and I help clients, and usually they send me a screenplay that they want me to do notes on and help them with or whatever, or help them develop their idea or whatever. But some of them are done and they want me to help them write their query letters. And
Oh, okay.
so, and it's funny to see like their very first version. And then after I sort of edit it all out for them and change it, then, I think they get better and better. And then finally they don't need me anymore, which is exactly where I want them to be,
Yeah.
right?
That's awesome. Yeah.
That's really cool.
Okay, so we would love to chat with you. Yeah, just the beginning of your career, how you got into this. You have really amazing filmography, so many credits, and it seems like you started in thriller and
Yeah.
then did more rom-coms later. So I'd just be curious, how did you get into screenwriting? How did you go from thriller to the rom-com?
Well, I grew up in Nebraska, and at the time that I was growing up, I was a child in the 80s. There wasn't really a film program there to take, and there wasn't really any film production going on there. So I didn't even know that screenwriting was a thing. I was going to be a lawyer, honestly, until my junior year of high school. And you know how they start sending you those pamphlets for all the colleges?
Yeah.
Yes.
Actually, I don't know if they still do that. They did that back in the 90s. And they listed, USC sent me one and listed screenwriting as a major. And I was like, you can actually be a screenwriter? This is so cool. And I had won a lot of awards for prose that I had written throughout my high school career. And
Cool.
I applied. And once I applied, I knew that was exactly what I wanted to do. I ended up only applying to one college, which freaked my parents out. They're like, at least apply to Nebraska.
Yeah.
What if you don't get in? And I was like, no, if I don't, being 18, I'm like, no, if I don't get in, I'll just apply again next year. But I got in. So it all worked out. And I went to the USC Film School in Los Angeles and loved it. Decided I wanted to take only writing classes and took every writing class that I could and got out and started working in development pretty quickly out of college and kind of parlayed those relationships into being able to write. I sold my first script pretty quickly, and then it took a long time to sell the next one. And so during that time, I was actually working at the YMCA, which I love the YMCA. Like I grew up as a kid learning to swim in the YMCA and gymnastics. Everything we did.
Yeah, same here.
So in college, I was a lifeguard there. And so they kept asking me, like, do you want to learn how to do this? Do you want to be a fitness instructor? Do you want to do this? Eventually, I just worked my way up to senior program manager. And at one point, they wanted me to take on my own branch. And this was between getting writing jobs. And they said, but you need to give us a 5-year commitment because there's a lot of training involved in doing that.
Oh, wow.
And I thought about it. I was like, no, I went to film school. I want to really try this. And so that was the point where I actually quit the YMCA and took out a loan to live on for 6 months. And said, if I can't make a living in 6 months doing what I want to do, I can always go find another job. And I ended up writing 2 scripts during that time. Neither one of those scripts sold, but they both got me work in the thriller world. And they were both thrillers, actually. And that's how I started writing thrillers. And I just started working with a producer who worked for Lifetime. And so started doing rewrites on those thrillers. And eventually I said to him, like, I would love to start one, like my idea, instead of taking on everyone else's idea and kind of fixing their scripts. And he let me do that. And then other people saw that I was doing that, and I was getting calls from people like, hey, I see you're working, and doing Lifetime movies. You're an approved Lifetime writer. Would you come do a script for us? Do you have any pitches for us? And so that's how I started doing a lot of thrillers.
Wow.
I just fell into it.
Yeah. Quick question. When you said that USC sent you a pamphlet in the mail about screenwriting, did you know what screenwriting was at all, or did you have to look it up?
No, I thought actors made up their own no clue.
One day.
No clue. That is, none of my family was in the industry. I didn't know of the industry, right? So I was like, screenwriting. And then when I went to the website for USC and I saw what you learn, they give you the list of classes, like the curriculum, and I was like, oh, this would be so fun. And, so much fun stuff. And I loved it. I really felt like, a lot in high school. I didn't really fit in with the other people in my high school. And a lot of those people, they were so happy just living in Nebraska and they kind of knew what they wanted to do. And I was just sort of this kind of creative weirdo that loved to write and was much more of, I felt like a risk taker. And so, so when I got to USC and I was surrounded by people who were kind of creative weirdos, and who loved to write and were risk takers, I really found my people there. And I loved it.
That's cool. I can totally relate because I grew up in Ohio, felt the exact same way. I think I told Aviva in our first episode, I think I just Googled what screenwriting was one day. And then I went to Emerson College and I had that same like experience just being on a campus with like a bunch of other like weirdos who were just like, I'm gonna be a film person, and I was like, oh, I feel like I found my people finally.
Yeah, yeah.
Isn't it a strange feeling because you don't even know what you're missing until you actually find it? You know, really,
Yeah.
and you know those people. My husband is actually from Ohio, also. So,
Oh, what part?
well, so he grew up. I'll just say that. So his whole family is still in Ohio, but he grew up in Arizona. Went to Arizona State, so he moved when
Okay.
he was little. But we still, we still watch the Buckeye games, and but I think it's one of those things where it really taught me that creative people are inherently creative. Everyone typically is creative in some way, whether you're in construction, you're building houses, whether you're trying to build a family, everyone has that creative part to them. But I think for people who want to write and tell stories, those people are not going to be happy unless they can be doing exactly that. And it took me doing it to understand how important that decision that I made not to stay at the YMCA and do what I was doing, which would have been a great financial path for me and a lot of security. I don't think I would have ever been as happy doing it as I am now, being able to tell stories, and influence people that way and connect with other people in the world that way.
Yeah.
So I'm sure you have that in you as well.
Yeah, I'm like, Dad, are you listening? Are you hearing? Do you understand me better now?
I'm sure he does. I'm sure he already did.
Yeah.
And so for Christine, so you were doing thrillers, and then when did you learn about Christmas as a genre and the holiday genre? When did that happen?
Yeah, so I've always liked watching thrillers and horror movies. Like those were kind of my favorite things, and I wasn't really into the rom-com-y stuff. It felt to me fake. It's like, oh, people's relationships aren't like this, and no one's happy all the time, and they're not so simple, and and eventually, though, I had this idea for a Christmas movie that I had a meeting with a producer, and I pitched this idea that I had that had just been floating around in my brain for a long time. And he's like, I love it. Send me the script. And well, there was no script. And I was like, sure. And I was very young at the point and didn't feel comfortable telling him there's no script. So I went home on the weekend and I wrote it in a weekend.
Oh my
and I
gosh.
sent him the script. Yeah. Like a lot of coffee on that one, and sent him the script, and he loved it. And they actually it was a company in Canada that optioned it, and they re-optioned it. So it was sort of tied up for about 3 years. Eventually they said, we can't find anyone who wants to make that. It had a male lead, and most, as you know, most of the Hallmark style Christmas movies are a female lead. Number one on the call sheet's going to be a female, and this was very male centric. But it was a love story, and so it went on the shelf for years, and then eventually I decided to start directing, and I was directing some thrillers. I did a project with a producer who liked working with me, and he made a lot of money on one of the thrillers that I helped him write and produce and sell. And so he came back to me. He's like, I'll do anything you want to do. He's like, let's put the magic in the bottle. I was like, well, I have a Christmas movie. He's like, let's do it. And it was so amazing that it happened the way it did, because at the time that the first company optioned it, I was not ready to direct it. But by this time, I had already directed a couple movies, and I felt really comfortable directing this. And so I got to direct it. So that was the film that I produced, wrote, and directed. It's available on Amazon, called 12 Days of Giving. It's a very low budget. You can tell we didn't have a lot of money to make it, but the story is very cute. The acting is amazing. And it has such a good message. And every year when that re-airs, I do get emails from people that I don't know saying, like, I just saw this movie for the first time and I love it, and it made me cry, and it's just it's the best feeling.
That's so
Almost
beautiful.
entree. It was, and it's still one of my favorite projects because of that. Because it just, even when we were shooting it, there's a scene at the end in a church where he's professing his love to Ashley Jones's character. She plays the female lead, and I look over, and one of the background actors sitting next to Ashley, she's crying. And I'm like, okay, cut. Are you okay? She's like, oh my God, it's just so beautiful. And I'm like,
oh my gosh.
It's amazing. So yeah, so I love that. I love that movie for that reason. So that was sort of my entree into Christmas movies. At one point, one of the execs I had worked with a lot at Lifetime and loved, she went to Hallmark. She left Lifetime, went to Hallmark, and they had a project that they decided the writer it wasn't working with that writer, and so she asked to bring me on. So she told the producers to call me. They called me. They said, we have this rewrite, she wants you to do it. I said, sure. They said, you're going to have to join the WGA to do this, because Hallmark is typically WGA, and they were. And so I said, okay, that, I know I'm going to have to give up all my non-union work. And I was doing a lot for Lifetime at the time. Those were all non-union. Now Lifetime does do some WGA stuff, but they do a lot of the acquisitions, which are non-union. I knew I was going to have to give that up. And I did. And after that, the same producers then kind of kept hiring me to do more rom-coms. So it was just it wasn't like I sought it out. So much that happens in this industry, as you guys probably know, is not from you seeking it out.
Yeah.
Like random things happening to you, random people meeting you, just being in the right place at the right time, those kinds of things. So that's why I always tell people, like, the more opportunities you can give yourself to meet that person, to have that pitch ready, to know what you're doing, to have that spec script or that sample script, you're increasing your own odds. Right. That something will be that you'll be there at the right place at the right time, and you'll be the person that they think of when they need a writer.
That's so true.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Was it hard for you at all to shift between writing a thriller and writing the rom-com Christmas movie, or did it sounds like it came naturally for you?
They're so different. I joke that I finally got sick of killing people and I wanted to make them fall in love instead. It's so building the elements of a thriller is so different than building the elements of a romance, right? And when we talk about rom-coms, a lot of these, there's more romance really than comedy. It's not a Judd Apatow type script where, it's mostly comedy and you have sort of these funny little romantic undertones. It's mostly the romance, and it builds very, very slowly in these, whether it's a Christmas holiday romance rom-com or just a regular like non-holiday rom-com. So those are very, very different skills to build. But I like both of them. I think they're both a lot of fun. And if you do them well, then you've really taken the audience on the ride, and they want the couple to either get together or they want the killer to be found. Either way, you've taken them on this ride, and you've got your audience.
Have you ever written a Christmas thriller? Is that what you're going to say, Isabel, too?
Yeah. I have not. There's not a huge market for those, really.
Yeah.
Like LMN is doing one this year, one. And in the past, it's been, they've kind of been hit and miss in the ratings. I think part of the reason is that when people think of Christmas, they want that feel good, warm, like let's drink hot chocolate and eat popcorn type movie. Thrillers don't, right? And they've just come out of Halloween, which I don't know about you guys, but for like a solid month, I watch horror movies.
Yeah.
Like this is the time, like Halloween is on every single night. So I think that people just, by that time of the year, they're ready to have something feel good and warm that they can watch with their family versus the thriller. So no, I have not. I don't even think I would probably want to do that. I mean, I won't say that. If someone wants to hire me to do it, I'll do it.
Yeah.
I would seek out as a spec and be like, oh, this is a project I'm passionate about. I probably wouldn't.
Yeah, that makes sense. We were talking on a different podcast how there should be like Halloween rom-coms on these platforms because it's blowing up in the book world. A lot of like witchy Gilmore Girls style Halloween rom-coms. I would love to write one of those.
Those would be actually really fun, I think.
Yes.
There's kind of two aspects of Halloween, right? There's sort of like the really scary stuff. And then there's sort of that fun Casper the Ghost style stuff. Right?
Yeah.
It sort of is more nostalgic and reminds you of when you were a kid and trick-or-treating and all those things. I think that stuff is really, I think a rom-com in that world really works.
Yeah.
Right? Yes. Because it brings back the nostalgia. And like the Christmas rom-coms do, a lot of it is about nostalgia, right? It's about taking you back to when you were a kid and you were opening gifts or you were spending time with grandma and grandpa and doing these things. That's really what a lot of these movies are intended to do.
Yeah, that's true. Like, that's what a Halloween rom-com can capture, right? Like us when we used to be kids going trick-or-treating. And I'm kind of surprised that there hasn't been one. Yeah, like
Well,
set
it's your
in that.
class. You better get on it right
Yeah,
after.
yeah.
All right,
You
Aviva.
start reading.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's co-write one about witches or something.
About witches, yeah.
Witches that fall in love. There's a love
Yeah.
triangle.
Please.
Cute. Honestly, how cute is that? We just came up with a great idea, and they like cast spells. They're in love with the same guy, and they cast spells on each other, trying to get him
to like them.
to
Yeah.
like them.
I like
Love
that.
it. Love it. I would watch it.
I was just gonna ask because I saw in your bio that you got a master's in criminal justice. Did that happen before you started writing thrillers, or
No, it happened after, and it was funny. So about, I don't know, 5 years before I kind of made that switch into rom-coms and start
Okay.
writing Hallmark movies, I kind of had this epiphany. I had probably at that point done maybe 50 thrillers for
wow.
Lifetime. And I had done more than any other writer. And I said, what do I need to do to be like the best thriller writer I could be? Right. And I came up with this list. You know, no one should ever give me a pen and tell me to make a list, because I came up with this list. And on this list was get a master's degree in criminal justice or criminology, one of them. Get certified with with one of the police departments as a citizen's, I forget what they call it, but you can actually, as a citizen, most police departments, you can actually take like a 16-week class where you do ride-alongs and all this stuff. So I wanted to do that. And there were a couple other much easier things to accomplish on that list. And so I did them all. And that's how I ended up getting my master's in criminal justice. I went to Boston University. It was all online. I was still living in Los Angeles, working, writing full time while I was doing the 18-month program full time. And it was great. There was so much that I learned. And what was really cool about it being online is that it pulled, most of the people that were in those classes with me were not screenwriters, obviously. They were in law enforcement in different agencies around the country in different capacities. And just learning from them, like from probation officers to police officers to canine police officers, and what they do, and making those contacts also was really helpful to me, because it's very hard when you're writing a thriller to call up a random probation officer and say, so what would my character need to do to skip probation? They're not going to tell you that, because you're probably calling for your brother. So this now gave people the opportunity. I have these people now who know I'm a legitimate writer. They trust me. They've spent 18 months with me, who I can call and do that research. And it made my life actually a lot easier. And that was an unexpected perk of getting that master's degree.
That's so smart. I feel like you just dove right into all the research and
that's so inspiring.
Yeah.
Do you guys like research? Because do you guys like researching? Like, do you love the part where you have to research stuff, or do you just want to like skip past it and be like, I'm ready to write. I wish I just knew the information.
It depends on what it is. Like, because right now I'm starting to write a Indian rom-com, and I'm half Indian, but I didn't grow up in India, so I'm going into the research process of like the differences between certain parts of India, like the weddings and all the traditions. So I'm actually looking forward to it, because I'm gonna call my aunt and just like be like, all right, walk me through everything. And like I look forward to like that part of it, not as much as like the online research and doing all of that like digging part. But if it's like interviewing somebody, talking to people who like you said, like I would really enjoy the like calling up a like probation officer and like be like talk me through this. I think so, like that part of research I enjoy.
Okay, how about you, Aviva?
Yeah, I think it depends what type of research. I like the idea of taking a whole degree, like a course, and then using that information. I think that I'd prefer that over doing my own individual research for that kind of thing. But like for a script I wrote, like called Twinsies, it's like early 2000s Mary-Kate and Ashley inspired. So like the research for that was rewatching the whole filmography. Like I even ordered like some of their DVDs like off eBay because I couldn't find them all. That kind of research where it's like a deep dive into something I already love. And so yeah, it depends what kind of research. But I think often I learn about something or I experience something, and then it kind of translates into what I end up writing.
You just sort of, you fall into like, oh, hey, that was an interesting thing I just learned. Like that would make a great story. I think for me, it's interesting. I agree with both of you. I love the personal aspect, like you can go find the people, like your aunt, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I guarantee you, you're going to plan on having a 2-hour conversation with your aunt that's going to turn into a 5-hour conversation.
Yeah.
And then you're going to come up with all these other people. And then you're going to be like, okay, now I got to call another person to find out about this part of it, right? I love that part of it. I love the online research because I find I just get into these rabbit holes where you'll start researching one thing, and then like I'm working on a project now that is actually a thriller, and it's a period piece though. And I don't know that much about that period. I know a little bit. So I came across this website that actually had the police reports for murders in the 1800s.
Whoa.
And I was reading, yes. And I'm
What's
reading
the
through
website?
it like, I'll send it to you. I can't remember right now.
I'm just genuinely curious to read that.
Like, they hand wrote the police reports and the witnesses. And if you, so this is what I mean by the rabbit hole. So they have the addresses of some of these places where it happened.
Yeah.
So I go on Google and I look, and some of those buildings still exist, have not been raised since the 1800s. I'm like, I'm literally looking at a picture of the building where this person was murdered, and I saw the police report. It's just, you just get so, so you spend hours doing that. And I'm like, I have nothing to do with my script at all, but I was like, this is so fascinating.
That's true. We talked a little on our first episode about I wrote a parody movie about Zac Efron, and I was like, my research was fun. I just watched all of Zac Efron's movies, and then I went down the Reddit rabbit hole on Zac Efron. But that was a fun world to go into, which kind of helped create some of the characters, just like reading like his fans' perceptions of him, right? And like that was, I mean, I'm like, yeah, my research was I was just like stalking Zac Efron on the internet, but
I love that.
It's research.
Reddit is like horrifying and amazing at like the same time, right? There's things on Reddit you're like, I had no idea that people like this exist. And then there's other people who are like, how did you get all this information? And they come up with like great ideas that you can twist and turn. And I love Reddit.
Yeah, same here.
And it's really cool that all of this is so accessible. Like it sounds like you didn't have to go to an archive and like dig through boxes to find the records. So it makes it so easy for us.
It is easy. You have to be a little careful. You have to really be able to vet what you get online because there's a lot of misinformation. Obviously, we all know that. So yeah, I think a lot of it too, getting the master's degree helped a lot because so much of that research is the beginning of them in grad school is teaching you how to research properly, right? Because in undergrad, you do a lot of papers, but you're aggregating a lot of information. And in grad school, you're doing a deep dive into one very, very specific subject, right? That's the difference. And so them teaching you what counts in the academic world as research and what actually does not, but there are still good places to start with some of that. If you want something that's going to be historically accurate or whatever, if you're just doing the Zac Efron thing and you're taking people's opinions, you can do kind of anything you want with it. It sounds like an adorable project.
It's really good.
I feel so inspired now to like, I'm like, I want to go sit in a library and read a bunch of like history textbooks.
I love the smell of libraries.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
Old book smell. I love that smell.
You've written for both Hallmark and Lifetime. Is there a big difference between writing for the two?
Yeah. So other than just the material being so different, right? They sort of, the way they work is a little bit different. The way the company works, Hallmark is very, very branded. Hallmark does a lot of cross promotion with advertising partners. They're very holiday centric. Their demographic is a little different. One of the things that a Hallmark exec once told me is that our movies are for people who want to watch it with their 8-year-old kid and their 80-year-old grandmother, right? That's who they're trying to market to. They're very feel good. They're very branded. They're very, they're even, the way they're structured is, very, very clear. They have a very clear structure. Lifetime is different than that. Lifetime, you might have, while Lifetime does their stunts, they'll do like Crazy Nanny Weekend, right? And all the nanny movies play and or Crazy Roommate, whatever. They have sort of just these topics. And then the structure has a little bit more flexibility, right? In that, like, you might be following the bad person the whole time and watching them scheme. Or in a Lifetime movie, you might be watching the good person and you don't know who's doing this to them, right? So there's a lot more flexibility in that. You would never have that in a Hallmark movie. In a Hallmark movie, we're watching the couples, sort of get together either with an initially contentious relationship or something that they were initially together that pulled them apart and then they have to overcome it. So that's the biggest difference, is sort of just how you build that story.
Okay, wow. Yeah, that makes sense, actually. I think, like, as you said that, I could, like, picture a Lifetime movie where you are seeing, like, the character and, like, little things are happening and it's kind of all unfolding, versus the Hallmark movie is more, these two people are falling in love and what's going to happen.
Exactly. And in the Lifetime movies, there's sort of a blend of mystery and thriller too, right? Mystery, the difference in that is that thriller, who the bad person is and what's going to happen to the character before it happens to them. So you see the person hiding behind the door as your character goes in, but they don't see them. So it creates this anxiety you feel for that character. That's a thriller.
Yeah.
A mystery is where you're with that character and you have no idea who's behind the door or if anyone's behind the door, right? So those are very different, and they blend both of those, and they go back and forth a lot with both of those types. And with with Hallmark movies and most rom-coms, really, we're not there to try to guess anything. We're just there on the ride to feel with the characters and help and feel them falling in love with each other. So it's very different. One's much more cerebral and the other is more emotional.
I just realized, so I read your script, the Charm Bracelet, right? Or I think the movie is a different title. A Little Christmas Charm. Okay.
It was released as a Little Christmas Charm. What you read was called The Charm Bracelet.
Okay. But I didn't get a chance to watch the movie. Is it a Hallmark movie, or I think it is, right?
It is re-airing. Yeah, it is re-airing on Hallmark Movies and Mysteries. So if you go to Hallmark Movies and Mysteries website and you put it in and you search it, it'll list showtimes that are coming up.
I recorded it we have like Fubo. So yeah, Isabel, you can borrow my login info and watch it.
Yeah, I really want to watch it, but it's funny because now that I know a little bit more about you, I can totally see like your criminal investigative background coming into it, because I really loved the pacing in the script as they were like finding out about the different charms, right? And I was telling Aviva that I was reading it last night and I couldn't put it down. Like I would like started at like, I was like, okay, I'll read part of it now and then I'll read it in the morning. But then I stayed up all night reading it. I was just like, wow, I've kind of felt like I was reading a like mystery novel, like I love the whole puzzle of putting it all together. And I was in my mind, I was like, I think I know who it belongs to, but I don't know for sure.
And we love Ashley Greene and like everyone from Twilight and everything. So I thought she was really great. I finished the film. I watched it as well. And I thought that they had really cute chemistry. And we mentioned this in a previous episode when we interviewed Carly, who she writes Hallmark and Lifetime as well. And I always just want a pea coat. I just want every outfit that Ashley wore.
It's so funny. One of the execs that worked on that film, right? I was talking to him at Hallmark, and he told me that one of his favorite scenes of all time of all the movies he's done at Hallmark is that train scene where they go back to the 1920s or whatever, and they get to dress up and stuff. He's like, it's just so beautiful. And I was like, yeah, and it was, the way they shot that was really, really beautiful. And it does make you want a Truby and a peacoat. Yes.
Yeah.
Really just want to look like that all the time.
Is that a real train? Like in New York, is that a real thing? Or did you create that with the...
It's based on a real thing in New York. Okay. So they do a train that only comes in and it's decorated for the 1920s and it's revamped, I guess. Like they only bring it out onto the tracks for that time and it does a little spin around the city. But ours looks, the one in the movie, obviously, that was shot in Canada, looks different than we didn't shoot with the real one. But yes, it's a real thing.
Okay, yeah. I was wondering if when you were writing this, were you looking up like Christmas things, like, or did you have that in your mind already as like, I want to do a scene with the train?
I found that in the research. I think I was Googling because the whole thing takes place in New York City. And obviously, since you've seen it, New York is a really big part of that movie. The location's a big part of it, right?
Yes.
So I was just trying to come up with cool Christmas stuff in New York to take these people to different places while they are on their search for the mystery woman. And I found this thing and I was like, oh, that's amazing. Like, how fun would that thing be? So yeah, so that one's real. The Whitmore, which is the hotel, right, where they figure out that is a fake hotel. There is no Whitmore.
Yeah, Isabel and I were talking as well. So like our favorite parts. Hopefully this is not a spoiler, but yeah, we really like the cake theme. I'll just say that. We like the German part of it.
That little line at the end of it was
we really
that little
enjoyed
callback. I was smiled. I was like, oh, that was so perfect.
Yes. And it also made me realize one of my favorite parts of a rom-com, this is like a trope maybe, I guess, but not in a bad way, we love tropes, is when a female lead is like, it's so beautiful here, or like, it's so stunning here, and then the guy always is like, yes, it is, but he's like looking at her. Like, I love, I melt for.
That particular one, I'm always sort of reluctant to write it. And believe me, I've written it a few times in rom-coms, but it kind of really depends on how that actor plays it, right? It's either going to be super cheesy or it's going to be super cute. And it really depends on, so much of it actually depends on the actors and if their ability to sort of deliver those lines, and Brendan Penny and Ashley Greene are both great. This was the second movie I did with Ashley Greene. I did a horror movie with her years ago.
Wow.
Oh, we love her.
Yeah.
And that's so cool, like, about casting as well. Now that you have creative control as a director and a producer, like when you're writing something now these days, do you already have the actor or actress in mind, or is that later?
That's a good question. So I don't produce the Hallmark movies. I have not done that. I've produced, I produced 2 movies over the pandemic that were rom-coms. One went to PureFlix and then is now on Amazon, and the other one went to Up TV. And in that case, yes, I wasn't writing because my company that I was working with is not union. Right. So I used a non-union writer, but I helped them through the development process. And I had a great writer for both of those. And when I was directing and producing, then yes, I was very involved in the casting, which is really cool because you can sort of pick the person that you're thinking of. When I write, I don't really think of an actor unless the network that I'm writing for tells me who they're going to cast. Like sometimes it'll be, oh, we're writing this specifically for like Allison Sweeney. So like for Open by Christmas on Hallmark, I knew it was going to be Allison. So I could picture her because I've seen so many of her movies, right? I know how she delivers lines. I know what she, and that kind of helped me. But most of the time I don't try to just picture a random actor to have someone. They're sort of every actor when I'm writing.
Yeah. Okay. That makes sense.
Yeah. Do you, between producing, directing, and writing, is there one that you like most, or like do you it sounds like you want to do all parts of them, right?
Writing is my first love. Obviously, I was doing that, since I was little. Producing is my least favorite because it's really just creative problem solving all day long, every day. And I love directing. I really like directing what I wrote because I feel like I can take it that next level. When I'm directing something that someone else wrote, I try to talk to the writer, and because I want to hear from them what their vision was. It's not always so clear on the page, right? Because we're trying to write so efficiently in a screenplay. So I like to have those conversations so I know what they're thinking and making sure that we're on the same page.
Yeah, I've been wondering that with producers, people who write and produce and direct, like, has it ever made it harder when you're writing if you have like your producer hat on while you're writing, and then you're kind of like, is this going to work? Like, do I need to take this out? Like, how much is this going to cost? Like,
I think at the beginning it does. I think when you're leaning in too much, like, oh, am I going to go over budget by writing the scene? It's really hampering creativity. At that point, you should be writing a scene that works, right? And then later figuring out, okay, if I have to pare this scene back or I have to combine it with another scene, that's a whole different thing. And I'm not sure it's a good idea to be trying to merge those things at the same time, because they're very separate things. When you're writing, you're imagining scenes play out in your head. So the writing and the directing go very much hand in hand, right? Because you've already sort of directed it in your brain, and you've written it to sort of be that way. So I would say with the producing, if you're doing all three, leave the producing to later. Just write that great story. And then, the other thing I see a lot of people do though, they know they're going to direct it, they skip stuff. Like they don't, because they know who they're going to cast, so they don't give the description, right? And I feel like that's a problem, because ultimately when someone's going to see that script, whether it's the agent of the person you want to cast, whether it's it's your crew, the information needs to be there as if you were writing it, as if you were never going to touch that script again and you were going to hand it off to someone. So taking these shortcuts because you're going to direct isn't a very good idea. And I've had clients do that. And I always tell them, like, go back and rewrite this in the way that you would just as a writer, even if you weren't directing it. So I think that's something, it's a little bit of a trap people fall into.
Okay. Yeah, I think we were reading a like production script, right? Like maybe one of the one that got shot, because I noticed there was like a little section on one of the pages where it said like production note. Here's like 2 other pieces of dialogue to film. So I've never seen that in a script before, but I think maybe that was just put in there, right?
Yeah.
So that you remember to do that.
Yeah, those are usually coming from the network. So, once it goes into production and you have that white draft, you get production notes, you get director's notes, and then you get usually a final set of network notes. Most of the network notes come prior to that, right? So, but at that point, you get notes from all these different entities, and they're usually pretty small. But for example, the network might say, they might have another way they're not sure yet how they want to cut this or what they want to include or whatever. So they'll tell you, can you just give us an alt line? And so you write in there a production note, film it this way, or alt line, you'll denote that. And so that when they get to the editing room, they know they're going to use one line or the other. And there'll be a discussion at that point with the director and the producers that I won't be a part of, but they'll have the footage they need.
I'm curious if any of it is ever ad-libbed or you have to write something last minute on set or something. How common is that? Or is usually the script locked in at that point?
So it happens.
Yeah.
I would say 40% of the time you're right. So usually what happens is they've lost a location or there's some production issue, right? They're like, oh, we have this train. By the way, the train isn't available or it's not working or whatever. So now it's not a train, Christine, it's this. And you can imagine what that would do in the script, right? So they'll usually tell you like, okay, it's not a train anymore, but they're going to go on this little airplane together. And you're just like, okay, so it's modifying those things, right? I've been on set. I've been invited when I was doing the Lifetime movies when they were shooting in Canada. There were multiple times I went up and you just sit in the production meetings, you talk to the actors. Sometimes if you have higher profile actors, they'll want to change their lines. Because I find that like the more closer to A-list an actor is, the more they want to tell you what to write. And it's fine. A lot of it is just sitting with the actor and hearing what they want to say or feeling. They'll tell you like, I just don't feel like I would say it like this, and so you're finessing dialogue for them. But most of the time it's because there's been some sort of a production issue, right, that has happened right away. They're shooting this tomorrow or they're shooting this the next day and they need new pages.
I've always been curious who gets the final say or how those conversations play out in terms of creativity. Like, do you as the writer have to ever like just let, like go with the no, even though it's not what you'd want to do? Or is that
many times, like the writer is the one who is the peacemaker, right? Like you get everybody's notes and it's your job to figure out how to make everybody's notes work together. Now that doesn't mean you have to do every single note, and most producers and directors and actors know that you're not going to. A lot of times it's a suggestion, but it's really understanding what the gist of their issue is, right? Like they're not liking this scene or this interaction for some reason, and so they might give you a suggestion that kind of in your mind doesn't really work, but you get, oh, I see what they're bumping on, so let me fix it in another way. So yeah, the final say is typically the person with the money, so that's usually the network, right? They're gonna if a movie doesn't come out the way they like it, they're gonna have reshoots and shoot things differently. But at the same and you're just there sort of to make sure that they are happy. But most of the time before a script is locked, everyone who needs to look at it has looked at it, has signed off on it. Everyone's happy with it. And so there's not a lot of, any dissension in terms of the script stuff or what was shot, after it's shot. There was a movie I did where they hired an actress who had a family member who was a big name, but she was pretty new, and she wasn't a good actress. And they realized that on the first day of shooting, and I was on set for this, and so they had me rewrite every scene to give her dialogue to other characters.
Oh my gosh.
So, and then the scene that they realized how not good she was, they had me rewrite that scene in a new place, and they reshot that one at the end of the schedule because they felt it was unusable. So that was interesting because, yeah, that I'd never had to deal with before. Okay, I give you the most simple dialogue possible, and then make sense that different characters that wouldn't have said this information are now saying that information, right?
Yeah. That sounds stressful.
No, yeah.
It was so necessary. Trust me, it was so necessary. It's such a once in a lifetime thing. Let me just, because I don't want to see I'm ragging on actors. Most of the time, the actors are amazing. They bring something to it. One of the things I love about acting and actors is they dive so deep into their character, where you guys and me as a writer, we're thinking about all the characters, right? We will never dive as deep as an actor does into their own character. And they bring things because of that. And so many times it turns into something that's just so beautiful, and you watch it and you go, oh my God, I wish I would have thought of that. That is brilliant, right?
Yeah.
And just seeing how they change, and sometimes it's so much better than you even imagined when you were writing it. They bring something so deep to it. So most of the time that is the case, and that's why film is such a collaborative, art form. But occasionally you'll get this other little thing, and I've experienced it once. So
that's cool. Yeah, I've heard of writers taking acting classes to become better writers, which maybe I'll do one day.
It's fun.
Yeah.
At USC. In the screenwriting program at USC, we had to take acting classes. We had to take a directing class. We had to, and then we had to take a stand-up comedy class.
Oh wow, that's fun, but kind of intimidating depending on what kind of writer you are. Yeah.
Very intimidating. But it teaches you a lot, actually, in learning how to land jokes and dialogue and understanding comedic timing and stuff when you have to think through that yourself. And then we had to get up and perform it, obviously. And so just knowing how that feels and knowing how better to a lot of people will write dialogue that actors can't even say. It's so long. Sometimes I read scripts and it's so long. I'm like, it's so didactic, and no actor is going to want to say this. So how do you write in a way that makes you're giving actors the tools they need to be good at their job, right? That's your job.
Yeah.
I think everybody should try stand-up comedy at some point in their life. I feel like I did it for a while, about a year ago, and I think it just totally helped me come out of my shell more, become more comfortable public speaking, and it totally helped my writing too. Like you're saying, just learning how to really land those jokes, and also it's just a good way to test out material and just see how people react to it, because there'd be some things I would say and I didn't think it was that funny, but then other people did, or things that you think are funny and then other people don't. So it totally it was so scary to do it, but I think after overcoming that fear, it kind of becomes a fun place where you can just, I don't know, open up more and really pull more out of your creativity.
It also helps you in pitching.
Yeah.
Yes.
Right? Because if you can get up in front of an audience and know that some of your jokes are not going to land, and you're going to hear that silence, or the few little laughters, and you're sad, I think going into a room with execs or studio heads or whatever, and being able to read that room, right? Because you're constantly, as you're doing stand-up, you're constantly reading the room. You're okay, this joke is not going. I'm going to go in a different direction. You're doing sort of the same thing in a pitch, right? If you see someone's eyes glaze over, you're okay, I'm getting boring. So let's go different. So I think it really helps with that too.
At the beginning of your career, I'd be curious about pitching, and was it always out loud? Were you sending in treatments? Like, how did pitching work at the beginning
So
versus now?
right, it's a lot different now. So in
Yeah.
the I started my career. I graduated in '96, so I technically started my career in the late '90s, and that's when there was like a lot of money flowing in Hollywood, these big
Mhm.
budgets and a lot of that kind of stuff. And everybody was doing in-room meetings, everybody, and tons of meet and greets, and there was just constant like drinks and lunches and dinners, and it was all that. There was something that was kind of nice about it because I really like seeing people face to face. I read people better when I'm in the room with them. And I feel like you connect and you remember people better when you've actually had a real interaction.
Yeah.
We do now so much on Zoom and so much through email that you don't really feel a connection a lot of times to the people other than their names, right?
Yeah.
Like even Aviva, like it's been what, like 2 years, right? And we've
Yeah.
communicated several times, right? Like
Yeah.
just seeing you for the first time, I'm like, oh, now I feel like I know Aviva a little bit, right?
Yeah, it's really nice.
On Zoom, and imagine like that gets so much better when you're in the room with someone, and the conversation is flowing from other stories that you have, and you're just getting to know like, oh yeah, my kid did that, and so I think it's sad we've moved into a place. It's much more efficient, but there's a lot that we miss now
Yeah.
that I think was there in the early '90s. Now you just send a pitch deck, you just send your pitch, you do a Zoom call, and it's different.
Yeah. I have another question about, as a producer, like, you read a lot of scripts, and do you have, like, how do you know this is a hard question maybe. How do you know what's good writing? How do you know it? Do you know immediately that you want to work on a project? Like, if you aren't the writer, or like, I don't know. Yeah. Like, just what's the process like figuring out what scripts you want to work on?
It's a good question. I know immediately if the writer is a good writer. I know in the first 3 pages. And it's how the writing supports the content. And that's one of the things I hate to be one of these people who's like formatting, but when stuff is not formatted, you're like, oh, like this is how you feel, right?
Yeah.
When it's properly formatted, you instantly just go, okay, they've done this before, right? So it's just like the things in your mind that you're worried are going to make you hate the script are like you're getting rid of them. Right. And that's what people don't understand. And I see so much like online saying like, oh, you don't have to format. There's no rules. There's right. There's no rules. You can break rules for sure. Of course. Right. But what are you trying to achieve? Is it just breaking rules for the sake of breaking rules? Maybe that's not the best choice. If there's a real creative reason for it, then that's probably a choice where someone who's going to read and be like, oh, that's kind of smart what they did. But if it's just because you don't like to be a rule monger, that doesn't make sense. So I can tell right away. Formatting, I can tell if the style of the writing supports the content. So if it's a comedy script and the writing is funny in the description and it's tight, I'm like, okay, this person writes comedy. I get it. It's going to be funny because they know how to write comedy, right? But if it's a lot of like, if it's long descriptions and it's not funny, but they're trying to say that this is a comedy, I'm like, when does it get funny? So that's what you're kind of looking for at the beginning of that. So I can tell you that in terms of the overall story, once you get through it, and a lot of times if the writing's not good, the person reading is not going to get through it. They're going to put it down by page 15 and it's 100% true. They'll just be like, no, it's a waste of time. But if it's good enough, and the reader gets through it, sometimes I'm like, this is a really great story, but the execution wasn't quite right. Being a writer myself, I usually know how to execute it differently. I can be like, okay, here's where it went wrong. This is what has to be fixed. Versus sometimes you'll get notes, maybe from a director or whatever, a manager, agent, whatever, who isn't a writer, and they're not sure how to fix your script, right? They can identify the problem, but they don't have that. It's one of the things I talk about when I talk about screenwriting consultants. When I tell people when they're hiring screenwriting consultants, because I am one, you need to find somebody who is actually going to give you solutions to your problems, not just tell you what the problem is.
Right. Yeah.
Right. Because a lot of people think that. But, when you hire a screenwriting consultant, you're hiring your own personal development executive, right? To work through these problems with you, not just be like, here's my notes, bye. So that's one of the things I always tell people is like, find the person who can do that. And usually it's the person who is writing in the genre that you are writing in, because they have experience doing it themselves.
Okay, so now we're going to do our quick fire round. We're still thinking of a creative title for that, so let us know if you have any ideas, like some kind of trope related to quick fire round. But for now, it's quick fire round. Okay, so the first question: what is your favorite rom-com and why?
Okay, so my favorite classic no question is simple and easy with me, right? Because I have too many. So my favorite classic one would be It Happened One Night.
Oh, I don't know
if you've ever seen Claudette Colbert and who else was in that? Clark Gable. It's great. It's sort of, it's like from I think the 1930s, black and white, but it set up everything you will always see in the future for rom-coms. It is the original, and it's really well done, and they're both great. Also, I would say for rom-coms, As Good as It Gets, which is an older one with Jack Nicholson, and not so much a typical rom-com, but 500 Days of Summer is one of the ones I really
love 500 Days of Summer.
I love that one as well.
Okay, do you have a favorite Christmas rom-com? Or do you have a favorite thriller?
Yeah.
I would say my favorite Christmas, it's not even really a rom-com though. I love Love Actually.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Yes.
That's a great movie. It's a great Christmas movie. But I would say no, not really. In terms of a thriller, Frailty is one of my favorite thrillers with Matthew McConaughey.
I haven't seen it.
Oh, that one's worth seeing.
Okay.
Check that one out.
Okay.
I like that.
What is your favorite rom-com trope to write?
Probably the contentious relationship where they're forced together. They're so hard to write that, right? It's so hard to force people into a room together like 10 different times where they hate each other and then make them fall in love, right? But that we meet each other and they're contentious at the beginning, sort of like in Little Christmas Charm, right? He knocks the cake out of her hand and they hate each other, and then he asks her out and then she's like, what? No. So those are that's probably my favorite show.
This is not in the quickfire round, but I just wanted to ask real quick. Did you come up with the idea for A Little Christmas Charm?
No. So actually it's based on a book, but interestingly, the book is nothing like the movie because they don't meet until the last scene. So it's a male doing his thing and a female doing her thing.
Sleepless in Seattle.
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
And when I got the book, Hallmark was like, well, we love the concept of the book, which is the charm bracelet, I think is like belongs to him, right? That's in the book. So they're doing their own thing, but they're like, but we have to get these characters together in the first act. So there was not a lot of the book I could keep, right? Because I had to have them doing things together.
Oh, okay. That's fun. I like that. And you got to read the book, I'm assuming, before you wrote the script.
Yeah. It's a great book. It just didn't work for the type of movie they wanted to do. If they were willing to do a Sleepless in Seattle style where we could keep them separate and have them meet at the end, then I would have stuck much closer to the book. But they gave me the mandate that is not what they wanted to do. So,
well, I like how you did it.
Thank you. I'm glad you like
it. Yeah. Okay, what is your favorite rom-com outfit?
Oh, I would have to say it's Elwood's pink outfit.
That's what I always think.
And I think every time I think of Reese Witherspoon, I think of her in that outfit for some reason, right? That's my first thought.
Yeah, so honestly, when you came on screen, that was my first thought I was like, Elle Woods is here. The pink, yeah.
Love it. Do you have a favorite rom-com line or moment that comes to mind?
I would say in As Good as It Gets, the moment where he says to her, "You make me want to be a better man," is one of my favorite lines in any rom-com. And part of the reason is he's so cantankerous. Like he can't say anything nice ever. And when he comes up with this incredible compliment, which is, imagine if, somebody said that to you, like, you make me want to change my whole life to be a better person because of you. It lands so well because of the way his character has been built. and yet it's so awkward when he says it, and she's so awkward receiving that compliment, and it's in the middle of a fight anyway, and it's such a well-crafted moment and a well-crafted line.
Yeah. That's such a flattering thing for someone to say, for sure. And I do feel like that's the point of a rom-com. Like I like seeing characters make the other person better, you know, like character development. They really challenge each other and make the other better.
Have you seen any rom-coms recently that you'd recommend?
Not that I would recommend recently. There was one Netflix did that I really liked I think it was last year or maybe the year before, called Love Hard.
Oh my gosh. I feel like we talk about that on every episode.
It's Nina Dobrev is the character. And there's so many things that like, this is so wrong. Like he's catfishing her, and I'm like, it goes to such a level, but you still, even though cerebrally you're like, oh, this is so dysfunctional, you want them to end up together.
It is so good. I agree.
The writing is just so good that they've been able to accomplish that and push the envelope to the point where both of these characters could be slightly unlikable, right, for what they're doing. Probably more than you would do maybe like in a Hallmark or an OWN or Up, script. But they did it and they pulled it off, and it's such a cute movie. And I've seen it like twice. I'm like, this is one I could just keep watching over and over.
Yeah. The humor is so good. True. The caroling scene I watched, like just the competitive brother is such good humor. I love it.
Yeah.
So they brought in like that kind of over the top comedy into that was with the brother, right? Because he's so over the top.
I love
right.
Yes.
Yeah. They're so grounded. So
okay, we just have a few more. I know we're gonna end this really soon. So if money didn't matter, what's a rom-com you'd make?
It would probably be some over the top, really expensive location movie like Crazy Rich Asians.
Yes, that'd be amazing.
Because I mean, who didn't Google flights to Malaysia after after watching that movie? So yeah, I think it would be something like that, where that wedding scene in the water, where she's walking through the water's coming down, and you're just like, this is insane. But it's so breathtaking and so beautiful, and it takes you on such a fantasy. I think those are fun.
Wanderlust rom-coms are
I was just gonna say.
There's one set in Germany, I think Heidelberg or something, that I saw advertised on Hallmark this year. I think it looks really cute. I'm gonna watch it. So what are you working on now? What's on the horizon? Maybe remind us about your webinar again. Yeah.
So December 2nd, 10 a.m. Pacific, I'm doing my webinar on how to write a holiday movie. So Christmas, we've gone into Hanukkah and Kwanzaa and stuff. And so now we're saying they're holiday movies because that's what people are buying, which is amazing. And we're going to lean into what you need to have for that. It's a 2-hour webinar. And then also we're calling it the toolkit of what you need to be able to sell it. So we're going to lean into the second half of the webinar is going to be mostly about that and all the things that you need and how to figure out who to query, right? Okay, you've got this great query lever. Who do you send it to? How do you get those addresses? Things like that. So that is $99 early bird discount until November 24th. Yes, thank you. And then the price goes up, but not by much. So join us for that. It comes with an ebook that I have written that will kind of outline everything in much more detail that you can just keep with you and use it when you write your movie. And then it also comes with a logline review. So you can send me your logline afterward and I will send you my comments on your logline on how to improve it. So that's the webinar. And then I'm working right now. I just got news this week that my Hallmark mystery, not holiday, was greenlit. So it's going to go into, thank you. It will go into production very soon. And it was a really fun one to write. And I love this character so much. And so I'm so excited. About that. It's a jewelry heist movie.
Always love a good heist movie.
Yeah, congratulations. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Cool. And so what is your website and are you active on social media?
So I am active on social media. ChristineConrad.com there's a contact page. If anyone has questions or just wants to reach out or learn about my consulting services or anything like that, that's where you can get all of that information. You can follow me on Facebook, Screenwriter Christine Conrad, which is my public page. And on that page, if I find contests and things like that or anything interesting article, I post it there. It's mostly writers who follow that. Yeah. And then I'm on X/Twitter. I'm not used to calling it X yet.
Yeah,
I
literally was
Twitter.
X.
I'm on X, Twitter, at C Conrad, and my name has that T at the end that no one is quite silent. And then also on Instagram. And I don't post very much on Instagram. Like I think I have 0 posts actually right now on Instagram, but I do have people following me. It's all for the screenwriting stuff. And I'm about to start a newsletter, which will be kind of integrated with Instagram. And then I will also be launching in the new year a writers group. So for a subscription, you get to come on and we get to, so for the first, like they're an hour long, for the first 15, 20 minutes, we just talk about one aspect of screenwriting. And then we talk about your scripts and things like that. So for people who live in places where they can't get an in-person writers group, I think this would be great. And it's 2 times a month for like $10, and it's so $5 to log on. And then also to help you meet other people writing in your genre so that you can read each other's scripts, right? And give notes.
Yeah,
right, because not everyone has access to that and can find those people. So so that will be coming in the new year, and so I'll be putting out information about that when that is all ready to go.
Awesome.
Cool.
Thank you so much. And we'll list in our show notes all of those like links and everything so people can read the notes there and find all of that. But thank you so much. This was super inspiring. I feel so like ready to go write and do some more research. And I also can't wait to watch your movie and check out more of your stuff. So thank you for your time.
You guys had great questions. And it's so nice to isn't it just inspiring to talk to other people who love to write and love this craft? And it's just, I always feel so happy afterwards. So thank you for inviting me. I appreciate it.
This has been an episode of When Isabel Met Aviva. Thank you guys so much for listening. If you want to stay up to date with our episodes, please subscribe. Bonus points if you leave us a positive review. You can follow us on Instagram at When Isabel Met Aviva. Also on TikTok at When Isabel Met Aviva. And then on Twitter, on Twitter is Isabel Met Aviva.
Yes. We weren't
okay.
Couldn't keep the whole thing.
We're both on Instagram and Twitter if you guys have any questions or need advice or just want to chat about your screenplays or your screenwriting career, or if you just want to obsess over rom-coms with us. My social media is just at It Writes Comedy on Twitter /X, and then at Isabel_K_T on Instagram. This will all be in the show notes for you to find. Aviva, do you want to shout out your?
Yes, I'm just Aviva Pelton on all platforms, Twitter, Instagram.
Avivas are a lot easier to remember than mine. But yeah, thank you guys so much for listening, and we look forward to having more episodes coming out, and just watch and write as many rom-coms as you can over the next week. See you next time, or
bye guys.
Talk to you next time.
Talk to you soon.